The cargo ship's engines made their usual humming sound as Jiwon checked the fuel lines one more time. She wiped sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. The mining colony on Kepler 442b was hot and dusty, but it was home. She had been working on ships here for 3 years now. Jiwon, you almost done down there? Do-Yun's voice came through the ship's communications system. He was the security officer for the colony, and his deep voice always made her feel safe. Just finishing. Up, she called back. The ship will be ready for tomorrow's supply run. The colony had been quiet lately. Too quiet, some people said. But Jiwon liked the peace. She could focus on her work without worry. The mining operation was going well, and the settlers had built a good life here on this distant planet. That's when the sky turned dark. Jiwon looked up through the cargo bay's open door. Strange shadows moved across the stars. The shadows were too big to be normal ships. They moved too smoothly, like hunting animals in space. Do-Yun! She shouted into her radio. Something's wrong up there! But her radio only made static noise. All around the colony, lights began going out one by one. The power grid was failing, but not from any technical problem. Someone was shutting it down from outside. The first ship landed with a thunderous crash near the main buildings. It was huge and black, covered in sharp metal spikes. Steam rose from its hull as if the ship itself was breathing. More ships followed, surrounding the colony like a pack of wolves. Jiwon ran toward the main settlement. She could hear screaming now. Bright blue lights flashed between the buildings. Weapons fire, but not human weapons. These made a different sound, like lightning tearing through metal. She found Do-Yun near the colony's communications center. He was helping people evacuate, his security uniform torn and dirty. Blood ran down his left arm from a cut. "What's happening?" Jiwon asked, breathing hard from running. "Aliens," he said, his face grim. "I've never seen anything like them. They're not here to trade or talk. They're hunting us." As if his words had summoned them, 3 massive figures stepped around the corner of a building. Jiwon's heart stopped. The creatures stood 9 feet tall on powerful legs. Their skin looked like dark green armor, with natural plates covering their bodies. Sharp claws extended from their hands, and their faces were like those of giant lizards, with too many teeth. One of them spoke in a voice like grinding stones. A small device on its chest translated the words into human language. "Humans of this settlement, you have been selected for the great hunt. Surrender now, and your death will be quick. Resist, and we will make it slow." Do-Yun stepped forward, placing himself between the aliens and the civilians behind him. "Over my dead body," the largest alien laughed. It was a terrible sound. "That can be arranged, small meat." The battle was short and brutal. The aliens were too strong, too fast, and too well armed. Their weapons cut through the colony's defenses like paper. Within an hour, the fighting was over. Jiwon found herself pushed into a group with dozens of other survivors. She saw familiar faces: Hyerim, the scientist who studied alien plants; Taiwan, who worked as a medic; Na-Young, who managed the colony's communications. All of them looked shocked and afraid. The aliens herded them like cattle, toward their ships. Jiwon counted the survivors. Only about 40 people remained from a colony of over 200. The others were dead or worse. She had seen some being dragged away by the aliens, still alive, but screaming. The largest alien approached their group. Its armor was decorated with bones and metal trophies. Scars covered its face and arms. This was clearly their leader. "I am Sektar the Blood Claw," it announced through its translator. "You are now property of the Vorthak Empire. You should feel honored. Your species has been chosen to participate in the Great Hunt on our homeworld." "What's the Great Hunt?" asked Dr. Hiram, her voice shaking but her scientist's curiosity still strong. Sektar's teeth showed in what might have been a smile. "A tradition older than your species, little morsel. We hunt the most dangerous prey in the galaxy for sport and honor. Your kind has a reputation for being unpredictable. This makes you interesting to hunt." "You're talking about murder," Do-hyun said, his hands clenched into fists. "We are talking about survival," Sektar replied. "The strong hunt, the weak. This is the way of the universe. Your species will learn this truth, or you will die learning it." They were forced onto the alien ships. The interiors were dark and cold, designed for creatures much larger than humans. Strange symbols covered the walls, probably Vorthak writing. The air smelled of metal and something like rotting meat. Jiwon found herself squeezed into a holding area with 20 other humans. The ceiling was too low for the Vorthak, but perfect for keeping humans from standing straight. It was clearly designed to make them feel small and helpless. "This isn't real," whispered Na-young sitting beside her. "This can't be happening." But it was happening. The ship's engines roared to life and they felt the sensation of leaving the planet's surface. Through a small window, Jiwon watched Kepler 442b shrink below them. Her home was gone. Everything she had built, everyone she had known, was either dead or trapped like her. "Listen to me," Do-hyun said quietly, moving through the cramped space, to speak with each group of survivors. "This isn't over. They think they're taking cattle to slaughter, but they're wrong. We're human beings, and we don't give up." "What can we do?" asked Taewon. "They're twice our size and have weapons we can't match." "We survive," Do-hyun said simply. "We watch, we learn, and we wait for our chance. Humans have survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and everything else the universe could throw at us. We'll survive this too." During the long journey to the Vorthak homeworld, Jiwon began to notice something. The other prisoners weren't acting like she expected. They weren't breaking down in panic or despair. Instead, they were talking quietly, sharing information, making plans. Hyerim was asking questions about their captors, trying to understand Vorthak biology. Taewon was checking on the injured and teaching others basic first aid. Na-young was studying the ship's systems, trying to figure out how their technology worked. Even in this terrible situation, the humans were doing what humans did best. They were adapting. The Vorthak guards seemed confused by this behavior. They were used to prey that cowered in fear or raged helplessly. But the humans were doing neither. They were preparing. When the ship finally reached Cathara Prime, the Vorthak homeworld, Jiwon got her first look at an alien city. It was all sharp angles and dark metal, built like a fortress. Massive structures reached toward a red sky, and flying vehicles moved between them like insects. But what struck her most was the size of everything. This was a world built by and for predators. The Vorthak had never needed to hide or adapt. They had always been the hunters, never the hunted. That was about to change. As they were marched off the ship toward their fate, Jiwon caught Do-hyun's eye. He nodded slightly, and she understood. The hunt was about to begin. But the Vorthak had made one crucial mistake. They had chosen the wrong prey. The holding pens on Cathara Prime were worse than the ship. Built into the ground like animal cages, they kept the humans separated from each other. The walls were made of some kind of energy field that burned when touched. Above them, Vorthak. Guards watched with hungry eyes. Jiwan pressed her face against the energy barrier, trying to see the other prisoners. She could make out shapes in the other pens, but couldn't tell who was who. The Vorthak were being smart about this. They didn't want their prey organizing before the hunt began. Food came once a day. It was some kind of gray paste that tasted like metal and sadness. It was barely enough to keep them alive, but Jiwan realized that was the point. Weak prey would be easier to catch. 3 days passed before Sektar came to visit them. He walked slowly between the pens, studying each human like they were pieces of meat. His claws clicked against the metal floor with each step. "Tomorrow, the great hunt begins," he announced. "You will be released into our finest hunting preserve. It covers an entire continent and contains every form of death we could imagine. Wild beasts, poisonous plants, deadly weather, and of course us." He stopped in front of Jiwan's pen. "You will be given basic survival gear, nothing more. Some of you might last a few days if you're clever. Most will die in the first hour. This is entertainment for my people and honor for my hunters." "How many species have you murdered this way?" asked a voice from another pen. It sounded like Hiram. Sektar turned toward the sound. 12 species have had the honor of feeding our hunting grounds. All extinct now, of course. Your kind will be the 13th. What makes you think we'll be like the others? This was Do-hyun's voice, calm and steady. The Vorthak leader laughed. "Because all prey is the same in the end. You run, you hide, you die. The only difference is how long it takes." That night, Jiwon couldn't sleep. She thought about what Sektar had said. 12 extinct species. How many billions of lives had been lost for the entertainment of these monsters? But something else bothered her. The Vorthak seemed so confident, so sure of how this would go. They had done this 12 times before, and each time had ended the same way. They expected humans to follow the same pattern. They were wrong. The next morning came with the sound of war drums. The energy barriers around the pens flickered and died. Vorthak guards herded the humans toward transport vehicles. But they moved differently now. Instead of the casual confidence from before, the guards were alert and ready for trouble. Word had spread through the Vorthak city about these new prey. Humans had a reputation in the galaxy, not for being strong or fast, but for being unpredictable. Some Vorthak were excited by this. Others seemed nervous. The transport took them to the edge of the hunting preserve. It was a vast wilderness that stretched to the horizon. Thick forests, rocky mountains, and deep valleys filled the landscape. It looked beautiful and deadly at the same time. They were given their survival gear: a simple knife, a water bottle, and some kind of energy bar that probably contained just enough nutrients to keep them alive for a few days. Nothing else. The hunt begins at sunrise," announced the guard captain. "You have until then to spread out and hide. After that, we come for you." The humans were released into the preserve just as the sun was setting. Most prey species would have scattered immediately, running in different directions to make themselves harder to track. The Vorthak expected this. Instead, the humans did something that had never happened before in the preserve's history. They gathered together. "Everyone, over here," called Do-hyun, his security training taking over. "We need to stick together." "That's suicide," protested one of the colonists. They'll find us easier if we're all in one group. No, said Hiram, looking around at the landscape. He's right. Look at this place. They've designed it to kill scattered individuals, but they're not prepared for organized resistance. As the E group formed, Ji-won started counting. 38 survivors had made it to the preserve. It wasn't many, but it was enough for what she was beginning to understand they needed to do. "We're not prey," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "We're human beings, and human beings don't just run and hide. We fight back." The first night was spent moving through the forest, staying together but staying quiet. Tae-won, with his medical training, kept everyone's health in check. Na-young used her communications knowledge to help them coordinate their movements. Hiram studied the local plants and animals, learning what was dangerous and what might be useful. They found shelter in a cave system hidden behind a waterfall. It was perfect, easy to defend, hard to find, and with fresh water nearby, more. Importantly, it was large enough for all of them. "Look at this," whispered Hiram, pointing to scratches on the cave walls. "These aren't natural. Something intelligent made these marks. The scratches formed patterns, almost like writing. But they weren't Vorthak symbols. These were older, smaller, made by creatures with different hands." "Previous prey," realized Do-yun. "Some of them must have hidden here before they died. Or maybe," said Ji-won, studying the marks more carefully, "some of them didn't die." Dawn came with the sound of hunting horns echoing across the preserve. The great hunt had officially begun. High above, flying vehicles circled like metal vultures. The hunters were coming. The first Vorthak hunting party found human tracks near a stream 2 miles from the cave. They followed the trail confidently, expecting to find scattered, frightened prey hiding in the bushes. Instead, they walked into a carefully prepared ambush. The humans had spent the night learning the preserve's geography and setting traps. When the first 3 Vorthak came through a narrow pass between 2 rocks, thick vines suddenly wrapped around their legs. As they struggled to break free, heavy stones fell from above. The attack lasted only minutes. When it was over, 3 Vorthak hunters lay dead, and the humans had their first weapons. Word of the attack spread quickly through the hunting party's communication network. For the first time in the preserve's history, prey had killed hunters. Sektar's voice roared across all communication channels. "Impossible! Find them and kill them all! No prey has ever drawn hunter blood in the great hunt." But the humans weren't finished. As more hunting parties spread out across the preserve, they found more ambushes waiting. The humans had split into small teams, each one using different tactics. Some teams used the preserve's dangerous wildlife against the hunters, luring Vorthak into areas where giant predators lurked. Others focused on sabotage, destroying communication equipment and supply drops. By the end of the first day, 12 Vorthak hunters were dead. The humans had lost 3 people, but they had gained weapons, equipment, and most importantly, they had gained something no prey species had ever possessed in the preserve. They had gained hope. That night, as the humans regrouped in their hidden cave, they could hear the frustration in the Vorthak communications they had learned to intercept. The hunters were angry and confused. This wasn't how the great hunt was supposed to go. "They're scared," said Na-young, listening to the alien voices through a captured communication device. "They don't understand what's happening." "Good," replied Do-hyun, cleaning a captured Vorthak weapon. "Scared enemies make mistakes, and when they make mistakes, We'll be ready. Outside the cave, the preserve's night sounds filled the air, but mixed in with the animal calls and wind through the trees, there was something new, something that had never been heard in the hunting preserve before. The sound of prey planning to become predators. 2 weeks had passed since the Great Hunt began, and the Vorthak were learning that humans were unlike any prey they had ever faced. What was supposed to be a quick, entertaining slaughter had turned into a grinding war of attrition. Ji-Won wiped grease from her hands as she finished working on the latest captured Vorthak weapon. She had figured out how to modify their energy rifles to work with human-sized hands. More importantly, she had learned how to boost their power output by 20%. "How many more can you fix?" asked Do-hyun, checking the weapon's weight and balance. "Give me the parts and I can fix anything," Ji-Won replied. "Their technology isn't that different from ours, just bigger and more brutal." The cave system had become a proper base now. The humans had expanded it using tools made from Vorthak equipment. Na-young had set up a communication center in one chamber, monitoring all Vorthak radio traffic. Hyerim had turned another chamber into a research lab where she studied captured equipment and local wildlife. Taewon had created a medical station that could handle both human injuries and the unique wounds caused by Vorthak weapons. He had also been training others in field medicine, knowing that in their situation, everyone needed to know how to treat injuries. "Listen to this," called Na-young from her radio station. "The Vorthak High Command is getting angry. They've sent in 3 more hunting groups because we've killed so many of their warriors." "How many have we taken down now?" asked Hyerim, looking up from her examination of a Vorthak energy cell. 43 confirmed kills, replied Do-hyun. "And we've only lost 8 people. That's a ratio no prey species has ever achieved. But the humans weren't just surviving. They were learning and adapting at a rate that terrified their hunters. Every captured weapon was studied and improved. Every dead Vorthak was examined to understand their weaknesses. Every failed hunt taught them new tactics. Hyerim had made the most important discovery. While studying Vorthak body armor, she found that the natural plates protecting their bodies had weak points at the joints. A precise strike at the right angle could penetrate their defenses. "It's like they evolved to fight large predators that attack head-on," she explained to the group. "They're not designed to defend against small, precise attacks from multiple angles." This knowledge spread quickly through their network. Human strike teams began targeting these weak points with surgical precision. What had been nearly impossible, kills, became routine takedowns. The humans had also learned to use the preserve's environment in ways its designers never intended. The Vorthak had filled it with dangerous creatures to kill prey, but humans turned these same creatures into allies. Ji-Won had figured out how to replicate the sonic frequencies that the local pack hunters used to communicate. Now human teams could call these creatures to specific locations, turning them into living weapons against Vorthak hunting parties. "Incoming transmission," announced Na-young. "It's from Sektar himself." The group gathered around the communication device. The Vorthak leader's voice was filled with rage and something that might have been fear. "Humans, your resistance ends now. I am bringing in the Deathstalker units. Hunters who have never failed to bring down prey. You will learn the meaning of fear." "Deathstalkers?" asked Taewon. "That sounds ominous." "Elite hunters," replied Hyerim, who had been studying Vorthak culture through their communications. "They're supposed to be the best of the best, undefeated in over 100 hunts." Do-hyun smiled grimly. "Then it's time they met their first defeat." The humans had learned something important about Vorthak psychology. Their entire culture was built on the concept of being apex predators. They had never learned to adapt when faced with superior tactics because they had never needed to. Their overwhelming physical advantages had always been enough, but humans had spent their entire evolutionary history adapting to threats. It was what they did best. When the Deathstalker units arrived, they found a very different preserve than the one they expected. The humans had turned it into a fortress. Hidden weapon caches were scattered throughout the forest. Concealed observation posts watched every major path. Emergency supply depots ensured that human teams could operate far from base. The first Deathstalker team entered the preserve with confidence. They were larger than normal Vorthak, their armor was better, and their weapons were more advanced. They had never lost a hunt. They lasted 6 hours. The humans didn't fight them directly. Instead, they used everything they had learned about psychological warfare. They made the Deathstalkers hear sounds that weren't there. They left signs of human presence everywhere, making the elite hunters think they were surrounded at all times. When the Deathstalkers finally found human tracks, they followed them into what appeared to be a simple forest clearing. The trap was so well concealed that even their advanced sensors couldn't detect it. The clearing floor was false, a thin layer of dirt and vegetation covering a deep pit. But the humans hadn't just dug a hole. They had turned it into a killing ground. Sharpened stakes lined the bottom, positioned at the exact angles needed to penetrate Vorthak armor joints. All 5 Deathstalkers fell into the trap. None survived. That was almost too easy, said Ji-Wan, looking down at the fallen elite hunters. They're not used to fighting an intelligent enemy, replied Do-Hyun. They've spent so long hunting animals that they've forgotten how to fight soldiers. The psychological impact on the remaining Vorthak forces was devastating. The Deathstalkers were legends among their people. If humans could kill them, what else might they be capable of? Morale among the hunting parties began to collapse. Vorthak warriors who had volunteered eagerly for the Great Hunt were now making excuses to avoid patrol duty. Some were even requesting transfers off-world. But the humans weren't content to just defend themselves. They began planning offensive operations. We've been reacting to them, explained Do-Hyun during one of their planning sessions. It's time to take the initiative. Using captured communication equipment, Na-Young had mapped the entire Vorthak command structure in the preserve. She knew where their supply depots were, where their commanders operated from, and most importantly, where their orbital support ships were located. If we can take out their supply lines, she explained, they'll be stuck here with whatever they're carrying. No food, no ammunition, no way to call for help. The humans began their first coordinated offensive 3 weeks after the hunt began. Teams struck simultaneously at supply depots across the preserve. Within hours, the Vorthak had lost 60% of their stored resources. But the real prize was the communication array that connected the preserve to the orbital fleet. Ji-Wan led a team that infiltrated the heavily guarded facility. Using her engineering skills and captured codes from Na-Young, she didn't just destroy the array, she turned it into a weapon. I've reversed the frequency modulation, she explained to a confused Do-Hyun. Instead of sending communications up to their ships, it's now broadcasting an interference pattern that will jam all their equipment within 50 miles. The result was immediate. Vorthak hunting parties across the preserve suddenly found themselves cut off from support. Their advanced weapons stopped working. Their armor's power systems failed. Their vehicles crashed when their guidance systems died. For the first time in the preserve's history, the hunters were more lost and confused than their prey. That night, as the humans celebrated their victory, they could hear something new in the darkness outside their cave. It was the sound of Vorthak warriors calling out to each other, trying to regroup without their technology. They sounded afraid. "Listen," said Hiram, holding up a small device she had been working on. "I've been monitoring their biological signals through their armor's medical sensors. Their stress hormones are off the charts. Some of them are showing signs of panic attacks. The apex predators of the galaxy were learning what fear felt like, and the humans were just getting started." 2 weeks had passed since the Great Hunt began, and the Vorthak were learning that humans were unlike any prey they had ever faced. What was supposed to be a quick, entertaining slaughter had turned into a grinding war of attrition. Jiwan wiped grease from her hands as she finished working on the latest captured Vorthak weapon. She had figured out how to modify their energy rifles to work with human-sized hands. More importantly, she had learned how to boost their power output by 20%. "How many more can you fix?" asked Do-hyun, checking the weapon's weight and balance. "Give me the parts and I can fix anything," Ji-won replied. "Their technology isn't that different from ours, just bigger and more brutal." The cave system had become a proper base now. The humans had expanded it using tools made from Vorthak equipment. Nayoung had set up a communication center in one chamber, monitoring all Vorthak radio traffic. Hiram had turned another chamber into a research lab where she studied captured equipment and local wildlife. Taewon had created a medical station that could handle both human injuries and the unique wounds caused by Vorthak weapons. He had also been training others in field medicine, knowing that in their situation, everyone needed to know how to treat injuries. "Listen to this," called Nayoung from her radio station. "The Vorthak High Command is getting angry. They've sent in 3 more hunting groups because we've killed so many of their warriors." "How many have we taken down now?" asked Hiram, looking up from her examination of a Vorthak energy cell. 43 confirmed kills," replied Do-hyun. "And we've only lost 8 people. That's a ratio no prey species has ever achieved. But the humans weren't just surviving. They were learning and adapting at a rate that terrified their hunters. Every captured weapon was studied and improved. Every dead Vorthak was examined to understand their weaknesses. Every failed hunt taught them new tactics. Hiram had made the most important discovery. While studying Vorthak body armor, she found that the natural plates protecting their bodies had weak points at the joints. A precise strike at the right angle could penetrate their defenses. "It's like they evolved to fight large predators that attack head-on," she explained to the group. "They're not designed to defend against small, precise attacks from multiple angles." This knowledge spread quickly through their network. Human strike teams began targeting these weak points with surgical precision. What had been nearly impossible, kills, became routine takedowns. The humans had also learned to use the preserve's environment in ways its designers never intended. The Vorthak had filled it with dangerous creatures to kill prey, but humans turned these same creatures into allies. G1 had figured out how to replicate the sonic frequencies that the local pack hunters used to communicate. Now human teams could call these creatures to specific locations, turning them into living weapons against Vorthak hunting parties. "Incoming transmission," announced Nayoung. "It's from Sektar himself." The group gathered around the communication device. The Vorthak leader's voice was filled with rage and something that might have been fear. "Humans, your resistance ends now. I am bringing in the Death Stalker units. Hunters who have never failed to bring down prey. You will learn the meaning of fear." "Death Stalkers?" asked Taewon. That sounds ominous. Elite hunters, replied Hyerim, who had been studying Vorthak culture through their communications. They're supposed to be the best of the best, undefeated in over 100 hunts. Do-Yun smiled grimly. Then it's time they met their first defeat. The humans had learned something important about Vorthak psychology. Their entire culture was built on the concept of being apex predators. They had never learned to adapt when faced with superior tactics because they had never needed to. Their overwhelming physical advantages had always been enough, but humans had spent their entire evolutionary history adapting to threats. It was what they did best. When the Deathstalker units arrived, they found a very different preserve than the one they expected. The humans had turned it into a fortress. Hidden weapon caches were scattered throughout the forest. Concealed observation posts watched every major path. Emergency supply depots ensured that human teams could operate far from base. The first Deathstalker team entered the preserve with confidence. They were larger than normal Vorthak, their armor was better, and their weapons were more advanced. They had never lost a hunt. They lasted 6 hours. The humans didn't fight them directly. Instead, they used everything they had learned about psychological warfare. They made the Deathstalkers hear sounds that weren't there. They left signs of human presence everywhere, making the elite hunters think they were surrounded at all times. When the Deathstalkers finally found human tracks, they followed them into what appeared to be a simple forest clearing. The trap was so well concealed that even their advanced sensors couldn't detect it. The clearing floor was false, a thin layer of dirt and vegetation covering a deep pit. But the humans hadn't just dug a hole. They had turned it into a killing ground. Sharpened, stakes lined the bottom, positioned at the exact angles needed to penetrate Vorthak armor joints. All 5 Deathstalkers fell into the trap. None survived. That was almost too easy, said Ji-Won, looking down at the fallen elite hunters. They're not used to fighting an intelligent enemy, replied Do-Hyun. They've spent so long hunting animals that they've forgotten how to fight soldiers. The psychological impact on the remaining Vorthak forces was devastating. The Deathstalkers were legends among their people. If humans could kill them, what else might they be capable of? Morale among the hunting parties began to collapse. Vorthak warriors who had volunteered eagerly for the Great Hunt were now making excuses to avoid patrol duty. Some were even requesting transfers off-world. But the humans weren't content to just defend themselves. They began planning offensive operations. We've been reacting to them, explained Do-Yun during one of their planning sessions. It's time to take the initiative. Using captured communication equipment, Na-Young had mapped the entire Vorthak command structure in the preserve. She knew where their supply depots were, where their commanders operated from, and most importantly, where their orbital support ships were located. If we can take out their supply lines, she explained, they'll be stuck here with whatever they're carrying. No food, no ammunition, no way to call for help. The humans began their first coordinated offensive 3 weeks after the hunt began. Teams struck simultaneously at supply depots across the preserve. Within hours, the Vorthak had lost 60% of their stored resources. But the real prize was the communication array that connected the preserve to the orbital fleet. Ji-Won led a team that infiltrated the heavily guarded facility. Using her engineering skills and captured codes from Na-Young, she didn't just destroy the array. She turned it into a weapon. I've reversed the frequency modulation, she explained to a confused Do-Hyun. Instead of sending communications up to their ships, it's now broadcasting an interference pattern that will jam all their equipment within 50 miles. The result? was immediate. Vorthak hunting parties across the preserve suddenly found themselves cut off from support. Their advanced weapons stopped working. Their armor's power systems failed. Their vehicles crashed when their guidance systems died. For the first time in the preserve's history, the hunters were more lost and confused than their prey. That night, as the humans celebrated their victory, they could hear something new in the darkness outside their cave. It was the sound of Vorthak warriors calling out to each other, trying to regroup without their technology. They sounded afraid. "Listen," said Hiram, holding up a small device she had been working on. "I've been monitoring their biological signals through their armor's medical sensors. Their stress hormones are off the charts. Some of them are showing signs of panic attacks. The apex predators of the galaxy were learning what fear felt like, and the humans were just getting started." The discovery came by accident. Hiram was examining what appeared to be natural rock formations near the old cave system when her scanner detected something unusual: metal structures buried deep underground. "These readings don't make sense," she said, studying the device's display. "There's a whole network of tunnels down there, and they're not natural." Jiwan joined her, bringing the modified excavation tools they had created from Vorthak equipment. "How deep?" "At least 50 meters. "And the metal?" "It's not Vorthak construction. This is older. Much older." The humans had been systematically exploring the preserve for 5 weeks now, mapping every cave, every water source, every strategic position. They controlled most of the territory, with the few remaining Vorthak forces huddled around their evacuation points, waiting for rescue. But this discovery changed everything. "We need to get down there," said Do-hyun when they reported their findings. "If there's something the Vorthak don't want us to find, it might be exactly what we need." The excavation took 2 days. Using their captured energy weapons as cutting tools, they carved a passage down to the buried metal structures. What they found below ground was astonishing. An entire underground city stretched beneath the preserve. The architecture was nothing like Vorthak design. It was elegant, organic, built by creatures who understood both engineering and art. But the city was dark and appeared abandoned. "Hello?" Hiram called out, her voice echoing through the tunnels. "Is anyone here?" The response came as a whisper from the shadows, in words that their captured Vorthak translators could barely understand. "Surface dwellers. You are not Vorthak." A figure emerged from the darkness. It was roughly humanoid but taller and thinner, with pale skin that seemed to glow softly in the tunnel's dim light. Its eyes were large and adapted for darkness, and its movements were graceful despite obvious signs of age and hardship. "I am Whisper in Dark," the creature said, its voice carrying sadness that seemed older than mountains. "I am the last speaker of the Melathi. We have been hiding here for 60 years waiting for the hunters to forget us." The humans exchanged glances. According to Vorthak records, the Melathi had been the preserve's 4th prey species. They had supposedly been extinct for decades. "Your people survived?" asked Tae-won, his medical training making him notice the creature's obvious malnutrition and stress. "Some. A few hundred, perhaps less. We learned to hide in the deep places when the Great Hunt began. The Vorthak believed they killed us all, but we simply disappeared." Whisper in Dark led them deeper into the underground city. What they found there broke their hearts and filled them with rage at the same time. Hundreds of Melathi lived in the tunnels, but barely. They had spent decades hiding from the Vorthak, surviving on fungus and underground water sources. Children had been born who had never seen sunlight. Elders had died without ever again feeling fresh air. But the Mylathi weren't the only survivors. In other sections of the underground complex, they found small groups of other species. The Zalani, crystal-based beings who could store information in their body structure and had been the preserved's second prey species. The Karath, insectoid creatures with complex social structures who had been the 8th species hunted. All of them had survived by going underground. All of them had been hiding for decades, slowly dying but refusing to give the Vorthak the satisfaction of complete extinction. 12 species, said Whisper in Dark, his large eyes reflecting the human's lights. 12 hunts. The Vorthak believe they achieved 12 extinctions, but we are still here, reduced to shadows, waiting for hope. How many total survivors? Asked Na Yung, her communication expertise making her think about coordination possibilities. Perhaps 2,000 across all species. Not enough to rebuild our civilizations, but enough to remember what was lost. Hiram was studying the underground city's construction with growing amazement. This place is incredible. The engineering, the resource management. You've created a completely sustainable ecosystem down here. The Mylathi were builders before. We became prey. Whisper in Dark explained. We have spent 60 years perfecting these tunnels. Every system designed to hide us from Vorthak sensors. Every chamber positioned to defend against their hunters. Can you fight? Asked Do-hyun directly. We've been winning up on the surface, but we could use allies. The old Mylathi's expression changed, showing something that might have been hope mixed with fear. Fight? We have not fought in 60 years. We learned only to hide. Then it's time to learn something new, said Ji-won firmly. The Vorthak have made one crucial mistake. They assumed you were all dead. That gives us an advantage they don't know we have. The revelation of the underground. Survivors changed the entire nature of the conflict. The humans weren't just fighting for their own survival anymore. They were fighting to liberate dozens of species that had been presumed extinct. More importantly, each species brought unique capabilities that the humans could learn from and integrate into their tactics. The Mylathi were master engineers and builders. Their understanding of sustainable technology far exceeded even human knowledge. They could create weapons and tools from raw materials with astonishing efficiency. The Zalani, despite their crystal-based biology, were living computers. They could store and process information at rates that made Vorthak technology look primitive. With their help, Na Yung could decrypt any Vorthak communication in minutes instead of hours. The Korath had evolved as hive-minded social creatures. Their ability to coordinate large groups and share information instantaneously made them perfect for managing complex operations across wide areas. Other survivor species contributed their own unique abilities. Together, they formed something that had never existed in the galaxy before, a multi-species alliance united by shared suffering and common purpose. We need a name, said Do-hyun during the first joint planning session between humans and survivors. If we're going to work together, we need to call ourselves something. The Pack, suggested Ji-won. Like wolves. Individual hunters working together to bring down prey much larger than themselves. The name stuck. Within days, the Pack was operational across the entire preserve. Human tactical knowledge combined with Mylathi engineering, Zalani information processing, and Korath coordination created a force that the Vorthak couldn't understand, much less counter. The remaining Vorthak forces in the preserve found themselves facing attacks that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Human strike teams hit their defensive positions, while Mylathi saboteurs destroyed their equipment. Zilani intelligence gathering told the pack exactly where to strike, while Korath coordination ensured that every attack happened at precisely the right moment. But the most devastating weapon the pack possessed was psychological. When Vorthak rescue ships finally arrived to evacuate the surviving hunters, they found the preserve's landing zones occupied by creatures they had believed extinct. The psychological impact of seeing dead species very much alive and fighting alongside humans was overwhelming. "Impossible," whispered the rescue ship commander, watching his sensors detect life signs from a dozen supposedly extinct species. The hunts were successful. The prey died. "No," came Whisper in Dark's voice over the communication channel, speaking Vorthak with an accent that carried decades of hidden pain. "The prey learned. The prey adapted. The prey survived. And now the prey has become something you never prepared for." The evacuation turned into a rout as pack forces systematically destroyed Vorthak equipment and captured their personnel. But the humans and their allies weren't content to simply drive the hunters away. They had learned something important from the underground survivors. The preserve wasn't just one hunting ground. It was part of a network of similar facilities. Across Vorthak space, thousands of species had been hunted to extinction on dozens of worlds, and if there were survivors here, there might be survivors elsewhere. "We're not finished," announced Jiwan, standing among the mixed group of humans and aliens who now called themselves the Pack. "This isn't just about escaping. This is about making sure no other species suffers what we've suffered." The Vorthak have 3 ships in orbit, added Nayung, studying captured intelligence. "If we can take those ships, we can take this fight beyond the preserve." Whisper in Dark's large eyes reflected something that hadn't been seen in them for 60 years. "You speak of attacking the hunters in their own territory." "I speak of ending this," replied Dohyun. "Forever." The pack began planning the most audacious operation in the preserve's history. They weren't just going to escape. They were going to steal the ships that had brought them here and use them to carry their message across the galaxy. The hunt was about to become a revolution. The alliance between humans and the underground survivors grew stronger each day. In the depths of the Mylathi city, beings who had hidden in darkness for decades were learning to fight alongside humans who refused to stay hidden. Jiwan worked with Mylathi engineers to create weapons that could be used by different species. The Mylathi understood energy systems in ways that amazed even her, while her human creativity found new applications for their technology that they had never considered. "Look at this," she said, holding up a device that looked like a simple metal rod. "The Mylathi can store incredible amounts of energy in crystal matrices. Combined with human projectile concepts, we can create weapons that hit harder than anything the Vorthak have." Nearby, Taewon was teaching Mylathi medics how to treat injuries from different species. The challenge was enormous. What healed a human might poison a Zilani, and what helped a Korath could kill a Mylathi. But together they were developing medical techniques that worked across species barriers. "Universal first aid," he explained to a group of mixed species students. "We all bleed, we all feel pain, and we all want to survive. Those are the principles we build from." The most impressive development was happening in Nayung's communication center. With Zilani data processing abilities, she could now monitor Vorthak communications across their entire empire, not just the local preserve. "The reports coming in from other hunting preserves are fascinating," she said, showing the group displays full of intercepted messages. "Word of our resistance is spreading. Some Vorthak commanders are requesting transfers away from prey hunting duties. They're scared," added Crystal Song, a Zalani who had become Na Young's primary partner in intelligence work. "Their entire military doctrine is based on hunting terrified prey. They have no training for fighting organized resistance. But the most significant change was in the survivors themselves. After decades of hiding, they were remembering what it felt like to hope. Whisper in Dark had become the unofficial leader of the non-human survivors, and the transformation in him was remarkable. The broken, frightened creature they had first met was becoming a confident strategist who understood both guerrilla warfare and engineering. "We spent 60 years perfecting the art of hiding," he told the Joint Leadership Council. "Now we will perfect the art of striking back." The Pack's first major operation was an assault on the Vorthak's main supply depot. Unlike their previous hit-and-run attacks, this was designed to capture and hold territory permanently. The depot was heavily defended, built into a mountain with overlapping fields of fire and multiple backup systems. For any single species, attacking it would have been suicide, but the Pack wasn't a single species. Mylathide tunneling experts created hidden approaches that Vorthak sensors couldn't detect. Korath infiltrators, with their insectoid ability to move through tiny spaces, disabled security systems from inside the facility. Zalani analysts provided real-time intelligence on guard movements and response patterns, and humans coordinated it all, using their unique ability to think like individuals while working as a team. The attack began at dawn with a Mylathai-designed electromagnetic pulse that disabled all Vorthak electronics within the depot. Before the defenders could recover, Pack forces were inside the facility, moving with coordination that seemed impossible for such a diverse group. "Control room secured," reported Do-Yun over the communication network. "Weapon storage captured," added a Korath team leader. "Medical supplies and food reserves are ours," announced Taewon. Within 2 hours, the entire depot was in Pack hands. But more importantly, they had captured something invaluable: complete intelligence files on the Vorthak orbital fleet. 3 ships, confirmed Nayoung, studying the captured data with Crystal Song. Command cruiser Apex Fang, escort frigates, Blood Hunter and Prey Stalker. Total crew of about 400 Vorthak. "What about defenses?" asked Jiwon, already thinking about how to overcome them. "Impressive against conventional attacks," replied Crystal Song, her crystalline body flickering as she processed information. "But they're designed to fight other starships, not boarding parties with mixed species capabilities." Hiram had been studying biological data from the captured files. "Look at this. The Vorthak crews have never worked with other species. Their whole civilization is built around species separation. They won't know how to counter coordinated attacks from multiple, alien types. That's our advantage," realized Whisper in Dark. "They see us as separate threats. They don't understand that we've become something new." The Pack began planning the most audacious operation in galactic history, a coordinated assault on ships in orbit launched from the surface of a hunting preserve. The plan was complex, requiring precise timing and perfect coordination between multiple species with different capabilities and limitations. But that complexity was also its strength. No single species could have conceived such an operation, much less executed it. Phase 1 involved capturing the preserve's shuttle landing facility. The Vorthak used it for supply runs and crew rotations, bringing shuttles down from orbit on a regular schedule. Mylathi engineers would modify captured shuttles to carry mixed-species assault teams. The modifications had to be invisible to Vorthak sensors, but allow for rapid deployment of forces once they reached the ships. Korath infiltrators would disable orbital communication systems to prevent the ships from calling for help. Their natural ability to work in vacuum made them ideal for external sabotage operations. Zalani data specialists would hack into ship computer systems, creating chaos in Vorthak command and control networks. Their information processing abilities could overwhelm even military-grade security systems, and humans would lead the assault teams using their tactical flexibility and adaptation skills to coordinate everything in real time. "We get one chance at this," Do-Hyun explained to the assembled force. "If we fail, they'll call in the entire Vorthak fleet. The preserve will be bombed from orbit and everyone here dies." "Then we don't fail," replied Ji-won simply. The shuttle facility assault began at midnight. Pack forces moved through the darkness with coordination that amazed even themselves. Humans provided tactical leadership, but every species contributed their unique abilities to the operation. Mylathi created silent weapons that disabled Vorthak guards without triggering alarms. Korath scouts used their natural stealth abilities to map guard positions and patrol routes. Zalani hacked into the facility's systems, turning their own security against them. Within an hour, the facility was captured with minimal casualties. More importantly, they had 3 intact shuttles and the access codes needed to reach the orbital fleet. "Modifications complete," reported the Mylathi engineering team. "The shuttles will appear normal to Vorthak sensors, but they can carry 30 beings each instead of the usual 10. Communication jamming systems ready," added the Korath technical specialist. "Once we're in range, their ships won't be able to contact each other or call for help." Crystal Song's body flickered with excitement as she processed the final intelligence. Reports. "Ship schedules confirmed. The next supply run is in 6 hours. We'll use their own routine against them." As the pack prepared for launch, something remarkable happened. Survivors who had spent decades hiding in darkness were volunteering for the most dangerous mission imaginable. They weren't being forced or coerced. They were choosing to risk everything for a chance to end the cycle of hunting. "Why?" Taewon asked an elderly Mylathi who was insisting on joining the assault despite his age. "You could stay safe underground." "Safe?" the old being replied. "I have watched my people die slowly for 60 years. I have seen children born who will never see stars. This is not safety. This is just a slower death. Better to die fighting than to die hiding." Similar conversations were happening across all species. The pack had become more than an alliance of convenience. It had become a family united by shared purpose. As the shuttles prepared for launch, Whisper in Dark spoke for all the survivors. "For 60 years, we have been ghosts, haunting the edges of our own extinction. Today, we become something the Vorthak never expected. Today, we become hope." The first shuttle lifted off just as the real Vorthak supply run was scheduled to begin. To orbital sensors, it appeared completely normal. Just another routine flight, carrying supplies and personnel to the fleet. But hidden in its cargo bay were 30 beings from 6 different species, armed with weapons that combined the best technology from each of their civilizations, led by humans who had turned survival into an art form. The pack was going hunting, and their prey was waiting in orbit, completely unaware that the hunters had become the hunted. The shuttle bay of the Vorthak command cruiser Apex Fang was a massive chamber designed to intimidate. Everything was oversized, built for creatures that used physical dominance to control their environment. The pack assault team crouched in their hidden compartments as the shuttle touched down with a metallic clang. "Remember," whispered Do-hyun through their communication system, "we move as one organism. Every species has their role, every individual knows their part." Through the shuttle's sensors, they could see Vorthak dock workers approaching to unload what they thought was a routine supply delivery. The aliens moved with casual confidence, completely unaware that 30 beings from 6 different species were about to emerge from what appeared to be ordinary cargo containers. Ji-won checked her modified weapons one final time. The Mylathi had helped her create energy disruptors specifically designed to overload Vorthak armor systems. Combined with human tactical thinking, they would give the pack a crucial advantage in the ship's narrow corridors. "Korath team, are you in position?" asked Na-yoon quietly. "External sabotage complete," came the reply from the insectoid specialists who had attached themselves to the shuttle's hull during launch. "Ship's communication array is disabled. They cannot call for help." Crystal Song's body flickered as she processed data from the ship's systems. "Internal security networks are compromised. I have control of their surveillance and can guide you around their patrols." The assault began when the cargo bay doors opened. The Vorthak dock workers expected to see supply containers. Instead, they faced something that had never happened in the history of their empire. Organized resistance from multiple prey species working together. Mylathi energy weapons disabled the aliens before they could sound an alarm. Korath infiltrators swarmed through the ship's ventilation systems, reaching critical control points within minutes. Zilani data attacks crashed the ship's computer systems, creating chaos throughout the vessel, and humans led assault teams through the corridors, adapting to each situation as it developed. "Engineering section secured," reported Taewon, who had led a mixed team of humans and Mylathi through the ship's lower levels. Their engine room crew never knew what hit them. "Bridge. Approach clear," added Whisper in Dark, who had overcome 60 years of hiding to become a fierce warrior. "Korath scouts have disabled their weapons control." But the real battle was happening in the ship's command center, where the Vorthak captain was trying desperately to understand what was happening to his vessel. "Impossible!" roared Captain Peckmore, staring at displays that showed his ship being systematically captured by creatures he had thought were extinct. "Prey cannot coordinate like this. They lack the intelligence." His words were cut short as the bridge doors exploded inward. The assault team that entered was unlike anything he had ever seen. Humans and Mylathi working together with perfect coordination, Korath providing real-time intelligence, Zilani ensuring that every ship system was under pack control. "You're under arrest," announced Do-hyun, his captured Vorthak weapon trained on the alien captain, "for crimes against 12 species and genocide across multiple worlds." "You cannot arrest me," Peckmore snarled. "You are prey. I am the hunter." "Not anymore," replied Hiram, studying the alien with the same scientific curiosity she had once shown to plants. "Now you're just another war criminal." The capture of the command cruiser sent shock waves through the other 2 ships in the orbital fleet. Their sensors showed impossible readings. The Apex Fang was under control of species that were supposed to be extinct, led by humans who had been released into the preserve only weeks ago. "This is Frigate Bloodhunter to command ship," came a panicked transmission. "Please respond. Our sensors show multiple life signs aboard your vessel that match extinct species profiles." "This is the pack," replied Na Yung, now speaking from the captured ship's communication center. Your command vessel is under our control. You have two choices, surrender or be destroyed. The frigate captains had never faced a situation like this. Their training covered fighting other starships, defending against pirates, even dealing with rebellions on Vorthak worlds. But nowhere in their military doctrine was there guidance for handling coordinated resistance from extinct prey species. They chose to fight. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Two Vorthak frigates, designed for ship-to-ship combat, found themselves facing an enemy that fought using tactics they couldn't understand. Instead of exchanging fire at long range like normal starships, the pack used captured shuttles to launch, boarding attacks against both vessels simultaneously. The frigate's weapons were designed to destroy other ships, not to deal with small, fast-moving targets that attach themselves to their hulls like parasites. Korath infiltrators cut through, hull plating and disabled weapon systems from the outside. Malathi engineers used their captured vessels' systems to jam the frigate's sensors and communications. Zilani data specialists launched cyber attacks that turned the ship's own computers against their crews, and humans coordinated it all, thinking like pack hunters while maintaining the flexibility to adapt as the situation changed. Frigate Prey Stalker is losing power, reported Crystal Song from her position at the command ship's sensor station. Their engine core is destabilizing. Blood Hunter is trying to withdraw, added a Korath scout who had infiltrated their bridge. Their captain is ordering a retreat to hyperspace. Stop them, ordered Do-hyun. We can't let word of this reach the Vorthak fleet. What followed was a masterpiece of multi-species coordination. Using the captured command ship's tractor beams, controlled by Malathi engineers, the pack prevented the frigate from escaping. Korath teams disabled its hyperspace motivators, while Zilani hackers crashed its navigation systems. Within hours, both frigates were captured. The entire orbital fleet was now under pack control. But the real victory wasn't military. It was psychological. Throughout the battle, the pack had been broadcasting their communications on open channels. Every Vorthak ship within 50 light-years could hear extinct species coordinating attacks, using tactics that their military had never encountered, led by humans who refused to accept the role of prey. More importantly, they were broadcasting to other hunting preserves. This is Crystal Song of the Zilani speaking to all survivors of the great hunts, she transmitted across multiple frequencies. We are alive. We are fighting back. You are not alone. The response was immediate and overwhelming. From dozens of hunting preserves across Vorthak space, hidden survivors began responding. Species that had been thought extinct for decades revealed that they too had found ways to endure. The Rithari of Preserve 7 are still here, came one transmission. Kalani. Survivors on Preserve 12 request assistance, came another. This is Preserve 23. We have Gorth, Vexhai, and Nolari survivors ready to fight, transmitted a third. Each message represented thousands of beings who had spent years or decades hiding in the shadows, waiting for hope. The pack's victory had given them that hope, but the humans weren't finished. They had captured ships, freed one preserve, and made contact with survivors across the galaxy. Now they had to use these advantages to end the hunting system forever. We need to hit the homeworld, said Ji-Wan, studying stellar charts in the captured command ship. Cathera Prime is where their government makes decisions. If we can reach it, we can force them to face what they've done. 3 ships against an entire planet? Asked Whisper in Dark. That seems impossible. Everything we've done seemed impossible, replied Do-hyun. But we're not the same species that entered the preserve. We're something new, something they never prepared for. Hiram was studying biological data from the captured ships. Look at these crew records. The Vorthak have been so isolated in their dominance that they've never learned to work with other species. Their entire military is designed around the concept of racial superiority, which means they have no defense against cooperation, realized Na-young. They literally cannot understand how different species can work together effectively. The pack began planning their most audacious operation yet, a direct assault on the Vorthak homeworld, using captured ships and coordinated resistance from multiple species. But as they prepared for this final battle, they knew they were fighting for more than just revenge. They were fighting to ensure that no other species would ever again face the terror of the Great Hunt. The prey had become predators. And now it was time to end the hunting season forever. The tide had turned. Across the galaxy, the message was spreading. The Vorthak were no longer the apex predators. That honor now belonged to the pack. The approach to Cathara Prime was unlike any military operation in galactic history. 3 captured Vorthak ships, now crewed by beings from a dozen different species, moved through space toward the homeworld of their former oppressors. Ji-won stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the planet grow larger on the viewing screen. The world that had seemed so terrifying when she first arrived now looked different. It was still massive and imposing, but it no longer seemed unconquerable. Incoming. Transmission from Cathara Defense Command, reported Na-young from the communication station. They're requesting identification codes. Give them the real codes, said Do-hyun. Let them think their ships are returning with successful hunt reports. Crystal Song's body flickered as she processed the Defense Network's computer systems. Planetary shields are down. They're not expecting an attack from their own vessels. The irony wasn't lost on any of them. The Vorthak had been so confident in their superiority that they had never prepared for the possibility that their prey might capture their ships and turn them into weapons. As they entered orbit, the true scope of Vorthak civilization became visible. Cathara Prime was home to over 2 billion Vorthak, spread across 7 continents. Their cities were massive, built to intimidate and dominate. Everything about their world spoke of a species that had never known defeat. That was about to change. Commence operation, ordered Do-hyun. The pack's plan was elegantly simple. Instead of trying to conquer the planet militarily, they would do something far more devastating. They would broadcast the truth. Using the captured ship's communication arrays, enhanced by Mylathi engineering and powered by Zalani data processing, they began transmitting to every communication device on the planet. Every Vorthak home, every government building, every military installation suddenly received the same message. The complete record of the Great Hunts. Not the sanitized entertainment version that had been broadcast to Vorthak audiences, but the unedited truth. Footage of terrified children being hunted for sport, records of species driven to extinction for entertainment, audio of Vorthak leaders laughing about the suffering they had caused. Citizens of Cathara Prime, spoke Whisper in Dark, his voice, carrying across the planet. You have been told that the great hunts were noble traditions. You have been told that prey species were inferior and deserved their fate. You have been lied to. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Across the planet, Vorthak citizens watched in horror as they saw the reality of what their government had been doing in their name. Many had genuinely believed that the hunts were conducted against dangerous animals, not sentient beings with families and civilizations. The psychological impact was devastating. A species that had built its entire identity around being apex, predators was suddenly forced to confront the fact that they had been genocidal monsters. But the pack wasn't finished with revelations. "We are the species you thought you had extinct," continued the broadcast, showing images of the underground survivors. "We are the Mylathi, the Zelani, the Korath, and a dozen others. We have been hiding in the shadows while you celebrated our deaths. But we are still here." Panic spread through Vorthak society as they realized that their greatest achievement, the extinction of prey species, had been a lie. The victims of their hunts were alive, organized, and capable of striking back. The Vorthak military response was swift but confused. Ships launched from orbital platforms, but they found themselves facing an enemy that fought using tactics they had never encountered. The battle over Kithara Prime became a demonstration of everything the pack had learned about cooperation. Human. Tactical flexibility coordinated with Mylathi engineering precision. Korath infiltration abilities combined with Zelani cyber warfare. Each species contributed their strengths while covering the weaknesses of their allies. But the real victory wasn't happening in space. It was happening on the planet's surface. Across Kithara Prime, Vorthak citizens were rising up against their own government. The revelation of the truth about the Great Hunts had shattered their society's foundation. Military units were refusing orders. Government officials were abandoning their posts. The entire Vorthak Empire was collapsing from within. "This is General Kethral of the Third Fleet," came a transmission from one of the approaching military ships. "I am ordering my forces to stand down. We will not fight to defend genocide." Similar messages came from across the Vorthak military. Faced with the truth about what they had been protecting, many warriors chose to abandon the system that had made them complicit in murder. Within hours, the Vorthak government was in complete chaos. The Emperor himself appeared on planetary broadcasts, trying to maintain order, but his words fell on deaf ears. A species that had been united by their superiority was now divided by their shame. "Enough," transmitted Hyerim from the pack flagship. "We're not here to destroy your civilization. We're here to change it." What followed was unlike any conquest in galactic history. Instead of occupying the planet, the pack made demands that focused on justice and reform. All hunting preserves would be closed immediately. All surviving prey species would be freed and given resources to rebuild their civilizations. The Vorthak would pay reparations to the families and cultures they had destroyed. Most importantly, the pack demanded that Kithara Prime become the site of a new galactic government, one where all species had equal representation, regardless of their physical strength or military power. "The age of might makes right is over," announced Jiwon from the Planetary Communication Center, speaking to the entire galaxy. "From now on, intelligence and cooperation will determine who leads, not the ability to hunt and kill." The response from across the galaxy was immediate. Species that had lived in fear of Vorthak expansion began celebrating. Planets that had hidden their civilizations to avoid being hunted suddenly revealed themselves. The galaxy was discovering that it contained far more intelligent life than anyone had realized. But perhaps the most remarkable development was among the Vorthak themselves. Faced with the evidence of their crimes, many began working to make amends. Young Vorthak joined the pack, using their natural strength to help rebuild what their species had destroyed. Kethvar, the Vorthak prisoner who had been captured weeks Earlier became one of the first of his species to formally apologize for the great hunts. "We told ourselves we were apex predators," he said, speaking to a mixed audience of humans and survivors. "But we were just bullies with advanced technology. True strength comes from protecting others, not hunting them." The establishment of the new galactic government took months of negotiation, but the result was unprecedented in galactic history. The Galactic Pack Alliance, as it came to be known, was founded on principles of cooperation, mutual aid, and the protection of all sentient life. G1 became the Alliance's first director of technology, working with engineers from dozens of species to develop innovations that benefited everyone. Do-Yun led the new peacekeeping corps, using pack tactics to protect smaller species from any remaining predators. Hyerim established the Institute for Interspecies Cooperation, studying how different forms of life could work together more effectively. Taewon created the Universal Medical Corps, developing healing techniques that worked across species barriers. Nayoung became the voice of the pack, managing communication networks that connected thousands of worlds and helped isolated species. Join the galactic community. The former hunting preserves were transformed into memorials and research stations, ensuring that the galaxy would never forget the cost of treating sentient beings as prey. Whisper in Dark, who had spent 60 years hiding in darkness, became the Alliance's first Minister of Survivor Affairs, helping other hidden populations emerge from their hiding places and rejoin galactic civilization. The Vorthak Empire didn't collapse entirely, but it transformed completely. Those who accepted the new reality joined the Alliance as equals, contributing their strength to protect, rather than hunt. Those who couldn't adapt retreated to isolated worlds, becoming a dying remnant of an obsolete way of thinking. Years passed, and the galaxy changed in ways no one had imagined possible. Trade flourished between species that had never known each other existed. Scientific discoveries accelerated as different forms of intelligence shared their knowledge. Art and culture bloomed as civilizations that had hidden for centuries revealed their accumulated wisdom. The humans, who had started as captured prey in a hunting preserve, became known throughout the galaxy not as conquerors, but as liberators. Their unique ability to bring out the best in other species made them natural diplomats and peacekeepers. But perhaps the most important change was philosophical. The galaxy had learned that true strength didn't come from dominating others, but from lifting them up. The pack had proven that cooperation between different species could achieve what no single civilization could accomplish alone. The Great Hunts became a historical cautionary tale, studied by students across thousands of worlds. Children of dozens of species learned about the time when predators ruled through fear, and how prey had become protectors through courage and cooperation. And on a small monument in the former preserve where it all began,